One of the most common complaints novice public speakers have is that they simply don't know how to start a speech. Many times, speakers get ideas for how to begin their speeches as they go through the process of researching and organizing ideas. In this video, I will explore why introductions are important and various ways that speakers can create memorable introductions. There may not be any one best way to start a speech, but I can provide some helpful guidelines that will make starting a speech much easier. The introduction for a speech is generally only 10 to 15% of the entire time the speaker will spend speaking. This means if your speech is to be 5 minutes long, your introduction should be no more than 45 seconds. Unfortunately, that 10 to 15% of your speech can make your audience interested in what you have to say or cause them to tune out before you've really even gotten started. Overall, a good introduction should serve 5 functions. Let's examine each of these. The first major purpose of an introduction is to gain your audience's attention and make them interested in what you have to say. One of the biggest mistakes that novice speakers make is to assume that people will naturally listen because the speaker is speaking. While many audiences may be polite and not talk while you're speaking, actually getting them to listen to what you're saying is a completely different challenge. Let's face it, we've all tuned someone out at some point because we weren't interested in what they had to say. If you don't get the audience's attention at the outset, it will only become more difficult to do so as you continue speaking. The second major function of an introduction is to reveal the purpose of your speech to your audience. An introduction is important because it forces the speaker to be mindfully aware of explaining the topic of the speech to the audience. If the speaker doesn't know what her or his topic is and can't convey that topic to the audience, then we've got really big problems. To develop a specific purpose, you should complete the following sentence. I want my audience to understand. Notice your specific speech purpose is phrased in terms of expected audience responses, not in terms of your own perspective. Next is credibility. First and foremost, the concept of credibility must be understood as a perception of receivers. You may be the most competent, caring, and trustworthy speaker in the world on a given topic, but if your audience does not perceive you as credible, then your expertise and passion will not matter. As public speakers, we need to make sure that we explain to our audiences why we are credible speakers on a given topic. An individual's credibility is composed of 3 factors: competence, trustworthiness, and caring. The fourth major function of an introduction is to establish a connection between the speaker and the audience, and one of the most effective means of establishing this connection with your audience is to provide them with reasons why they should listen to your speech. The idea of establishing a connection is an extension of the notion of caring. Instead of assuming the audience will make their own connections to your material, you should explicitly state how your information might be useful to the audience. Tell them directly how they might use your information themselves. It is not enough for you alone to be interested in your topic. You need to build a bridge to the audience by explicitly connecting your topic to their possible needs. The last major function of an introduction is to preview the main ideas that your speech will discuss. A preview establishes the direction your speech will take. We sometimes call this process signposting because you're establishing signs for the audience members to look for while you're speaking. Sometimes we call it road mapping as well. In the most basic speech format, speakers generally have 3 to 5 major points they plan on making. During the preview, a speaker outlines what these points will be, which demonstrates to the audience that the speaker is organized. It also helps your audience keep track of where you are if they momentarily daydream or get distracted. So how do you go about building those first words? Let's look. The attention getter, or hook, is the device a speaker uses at the beginning of a speech to capture an audience's interest and make them interested in the speech's topic. Typically, there are 4 things to consider in choosing the specific attention-getting device: the appropriateness to the audience, the purpose of the speech, the topic, and the occasion. When selecting a hook, you want to make sure that the option you choose is actually appropriate and relevant to your specific audience. Different audiences will have different backgrounds and knowledge, so you should use your audience analysis to determine whether specific information you plan on using would be appropriate for this audience. The first style of a hook you could use is just to tell your audience the subject of your speech. This device is probably the most direct, but it may also be the least interesting of the possible attention-getting devices. Here's an example. This sentence explicitly tells an audience that the speech they are about to hear is on the importance of understanding statistics. While this is not the most entertaining or interesting attention getter, it is at least very clear and direct. The second way to accomplish this might be a reference to the audience. In this case, the speaker has a clear understanding of the audience and points out that there's something unique about the audience that might make them interested in the speech's content. In this example, the speaker reminds the audience of their shared status as college students and uses the common ground to acknowledge the importance of finding a parking spot on campus. Another way to capture your listener's attention is to use the words of another person that directly relate to your topic. You could use a quotation as a hook. Maybe you found a really great quote in one of the articles or books you've read while researching your speech. If not, there are a number of sources that compile useful quotations from noted individuals. A Google search will help you out. Here's one about education. You could also refer to a current news event that relates to your topic. It's also an effective way to capture attention as it immediately makes the audience aware of how relevant the topic is in today's world. In this example, the speaker starts with a reference to the COVID crisis, which everyone in the audience would be familiar with. Another device you could use to start a speech is to tell an anecdote related to the speech's story. An anecdote is just a brief account or story of an interesting or humorous event. Notice the emphasis here is on the word brief. A common mistake speakers make when telling an anecdote is to make the anecdote too long. Remember, your entire introduction should only be 10 to 15% of your speech, so your attention getter must be very short. One type of anecdote is a real story that emphasizes a speech's basic message. Keeping your story short and entertaining is important, and their application to your speech topic should be quite clear. A seventh way that you could start a speech is to surprise your audience with startling information about your topic. Often, startling statements come in the form of statistics or strange facts. The goal of a good startling statistic is that it surprises the audience and gets them engaged in your topic. For example, if you were giving a speech about oil conservation, you could start by saying, a Boeing 747 airliner holds 57,000 gallons of fuel. A strange fact, on the other hand, is a statement that does not involve numbers, but is equally surprising to most audiences. For example, you could start a speech on the gambling industry by saying, there are no clocks in any casino in Las Vegas. Although startling statistics are fun, it's important to use them ethically. First, make sure that your startling statement is factual. Second, make sure that your startling statement is relevant to your speech and not just thrown in for shock value. We've all heard startling claims made by the media that are clearly made for the purposes of shock or fear-mongering. As speakers, we have an ethical obligation to avoid playing on people's emotions in this way. Another strategy for getting your audience's attention is to ask them a question. There are two types of questions commonly used as attention getters: response questions and rhetorical questions. A response question is a question that the audience is expected to answer in some manner. For example, you could ask your audience, please raise your hand if you've ever thought about backpacking in Europe. A rhetorical question, on the other hand, is a question to which no reply is expected. You may consider starting a speech with a story to refer about yourself that is relevant to your topic. Some of those best speeches are ones that come from personal knowledge and experience. If you're an expert or have first-hand experience relating to your topic, sharing this information with the audience is a great way to show them you're credible during your attention getter. If you use a personal example, don't get carried away with the focus on yourself or on your own life. Your speech topic is the purpose of the attention getter, not the other way around. Another pitfall in using a personal example is that it may be too personal for you to maintain your composure, so just be careful with that. So putting an introduction together is 6 things: the hook, the link to the topic, a reason for the audience to listen, the speaker's credibility statement, a thesis sentence, and a preview of points. We've discussed the attention getter. The second major part of the introduction is called the link to the topic. The link to the topic is the shortest part of the introduction and occurs when a speaker demonstrates how the attention-getting device, or the hook, relates to the topic of the speech. Often, the hook and the link to the topic are very clear, but sometimes, depending on which hook you choose, you may need a sentence to link the hook with the topic. Once you have linked an attention getter to the topic of your speech, you need to explain to your audience why your topic is important. We call this the "why should I care" part of your speech because it tells your audience why the topic is directly important to them. Sometimes you can include the significance of your topic in the same sentence as your link to the topic, but other times you may need to spell it out in one or two sentences why your specific topic is important. People in today's world are very busy and they do not like to have their time wasted. Nothing is worse than having to sit through a speech that has nothing to do with you. Most of us would be pretty annoyed at having had our time wasted this way. Be sure to let the audience know what's in this speech for them. The fourth part of a credibility statement is not so much a specific part as an important characteristic that needs to be pervasive throughout your introduction and your entire speech. As a speaker, you want to be seen as a credible, that means competent, trustworthy, and caring, person. Credibility is ultimately a perception that is made by your audience. While your audience determines whether they perceive you as competent, trustworthy, and caring, there are some strategies you can employ to make yourself appear more credible. You can explain why you are qualified to speak on this topic. It may simply be as simple as stating the fact that you've done your research. Part 5 is the thesis sentence. It is a short, decorative sentence that states the purpose, intent, or main idea of a speech. A strong, clear thesis statement is very valuable within an introduction because it lays out the basic goal of the entire speech. I strongly believe that it is worthwhile to invest some time in framing and writing a good thesis statement. A thesis statement helps your audience by letting them know in a nutshell what you're going to talk about. With a good thesis statement, you will fulfill 4 basic functions. You express your specific purpose, provide a way to organize your main points, make your research more effective, and enhance your delivery. The final part of an introduction contains a preview of the major points to be covered within your speech. I'm sure we've all seen signs that have cities listed on them with a mileage to reach the cities. This mileage sign is an indication of what's to come. A preview works the same way. A preview foreshadows what the main body points will be in the speech. For example, to preview a speech on bullying in the workplace, one could say, "To understand the nature of bullying in the modern workplace, I will first define what workplace is and the types of bullying. I will then discuss the common characteristics of both workplace bullies and their targets. And lastly, I will explore some possible solutions to workplace bullying." In this case, each of the phrases mentioned in the preview would be a single distinct point made in the speech itself. Having a preview is an integral part of your speech and should be the last part of your introduction. So there you have it. Now it's your turn to write your own introduction.